What's up, gamers? Welcome to Battle Mallet Podcast, episode 69. Very nice. For anyone that isn't familiar, the Battle Mallet Podcast is the journey of three busy gamers playing games that they love, balancing life with those games, and making their way up to the Nova Open Convention every year. Tonight's episode is The Professor at Nova 2024. So the Professor at Nova Part 2, I suppose. If you haven't listened to our previous guest spot with the Professor, where he won Nova 2022, you should go back and listen to that. We get into some more details about who the Professor is. But my name is Gerard Johnson. I am the host for tonight. I am joined by Jason Murray.
I'm a giver.
You are a giver. And our special guest tonight is Gerard the Professor, the Grand Clash champion of Warhammer Underworlds at Nova 2022 and Nova 2024. So welcome to the show again.
Great to be here, guys.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you at Nova, and then doubly a pleasure to have you on the show with us.
Thank you.
We are not going to do any of our normal segments, so we're going to try to keep this episode tight, so we're not going to catch up on what we've been up to, other than just being sad that we're not at Nova for the past week.
Very sad.
Yeah, so
it's been very depressing, very.
Well, so I think we can take a little bit of a break. There has been a rainbow in the sky post-Nova, Jason.
Two rainbows.
Double rainbows? Well, there was literally a double rainbow on the drive home. But I'm talking about Space Marine 2.
Yes, so Space Marine 2 came out, well, for me, it came out a day ago after I got cut up with work for being with Nova. And one of my favorite bands of all time now has a new lead singer.
That's
so
true. Yeah.
Linkin Park and Space Marine 2 got back together on the same day. What a week.
And we get to hang out with the Professor tonight.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It's the hat trick.
Yeah.
So not all doom and gloom post Nova, but so in tonight's episode, we're gonna cover kind of two things. We want to talk to the Professor about his experience in the Grand Clash, winning it. We're not gonna go for the full play-by-play. Gerard is also going to appear on the Path to Glory podcast sometime in the near future, so you'll be able to get another perspective on his experience from them.
Not to get sick with my voice.
I know.
That'll never happen.
It's the dream. Just be out there everywhere. But we'll talk about your Clash experience, and then we'll probably spend most of our episode going through an audio deck guide in the same style that we have done every time there's a major release. Or in the style that Jason and I have done for some of the decks that we've crafted. So
awesome.
With that, I am going to pass the virtual microphone over to Jason, who is our interviewer extraordinaire. He's going to take the reins for the Clash section, and then we'll come back together to talk about the deck. So Jason, take it away, bud.
Well, thank you. So I think, thanks for being on, Gerard. The first question I have is, why Nova? Why did you pick to come to Nova?
Well, you know the answer to that.
But maybe the listeners don't.
Maybe the listeners don't. So I am a ripe gamer of a vintage maybe even older than your hosts in this podcast. Meaning that I'm also trying to juggle life, work, family, and hobby. And for this reason, I've had a soft spot for this particular podcast and the hosts here who are basically trying to navigate life like this. And in fact, make a podcast out of it, which is more than I have done. So as a consequence, the high of my gaming life every year is to go to Nova, which I guess is my local convention, since here in the US I live in Connecticut, and hang out with these people. I recommend everybody who's listening to the podcast, if they get a chance to show up at Nova. Frankly, I think all of us mostly show up to hang out.
Yes.
Gaming. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And it is a highlight of my year to get to hang out with you and hear you just talk about everything, right? Life, games, other
work,
games.
family.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But mostly life. I mean, if we can avoid it, mostly gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's always a great time. So thank you for coming down. So in the lead up to Nova, you came and selected the Drepur. The Drepur Creepers, as I like to call them. What made you land on this warband?
That's actually a good. It's frankly sometimes things are very random. I hadn't played much in the first half of this year. I was living abroad, traveling a lot. It's been a bit of a mess of a year. So when I landed back here in late July, I quickly had to decide. Well, I'm definitely going to Nova. Tickets are bought, right? What are we going to do? I didn't have that much of a sense of the meta because of and I expected, but I knew, people were all extremely hot on Parasite, right? So I expected, well, maybe this is going to be like a very aggro meta, people running into you and smashing you. I guess breakneck, whatever, Slaughter also is this kind of deck. So I tried a bunch of things that thought could counter that. Nothing really stuck. Was playing a few games on Basel. And I think I played a random game with George, with Kairos, and I was trying to make Drepur with Fearsome Fortress work. The idea I landed in Drepur, frankly, is this idea that if people come to me, I like that because then I inspire. That was basically the base, since I thought people would be playing aggro. And then, if I remember correctly, he kind of dropped the hint. He said, "Oh, I think that Drepur works well with Toxin Terrors." And of course, me being the person that I am, whatever, what does this guy know? And I moved on trying other things. And then actually, I know exactly how this worked. I was putting together a Toxic Terror, I was putting together a Reaper Narfang deck on the idea that if people are playing Parasite, there's nothing that Reaper likes more than be able to reroll both attacks, the main attack and the wolf attack, So, and then I was putting a Reaper together. I thought, actually, the pairing with Toxic Terrors actually seems kind of very interesting. And then on second look at this, I said, but wait a second, everything I'm trying to do here, I can do better with Drepur. Didn't George say something about this? Actually, I went back to our Discord chat, and he not only had said that, in fact, he had even dropped like some embryo of a deck. So that was the base. So basically, then I spent basically most of August playing almost a game a day with, you must know these guys, Martin Higham, a very good friend from back in England. He goes by Godsworn Gamer on Basel. Great guy. So we spent so he was kind of my sparring for this, playing kind of a game a day with a time difference. Not very meta because he was trying to put together a Moloch deck, frankly. But anyway, but at least this made me familiar with the warband, and also discard a few. We can talk later when we discuss the deck. I was trying to go one way and then I went the other way because I realized that the deck flew better. And frankly, that was that. To be honest, I never thought it was in the contention to win this thing. To be honest, it was all a bit ridiculous. But that's how I ended up here. That's a long-winded answer.
No, that's awesome. It really explains the creative process that a player can go through. And you mentioned that you weren't really ingrained in the meta and practicing against Moloch. I mean, newsflash, no Molochs at the event, so that was a little bit different. What's your favorite thing about the warband itself? Maybe not the deck, but like what do you like about Drepur? Because you had mentioned before we played in the Clash that you wanted to bring something familiar. So what did you like about them?
Back in the day when they were released, I played them quite a bit. So first of all, I actually like whoever came up with this idea of making, ghosts with skulls of horses for ghosts. It's just a ridiculous idea, basically.
Yeah.
I think that there is some tradition. There's some Welsh folk ghost that looks like that. But anyway, it's basically a ridiculous thing. And the funny thing, I had eyes on those minis since they came up for iOS originally. And when they finally released them as an Underworlds mini, I was like all over, I thought, this is great. And now I really have an excuse to play them. And basically, the great thing in the context of playing them in Underworlds is just range 2. Range 2 everywhere. It's just beautiful. Especially when you put it together with the usual ghostly pack of abilities that you can fly through people and which allows you to locate exactly where you need to be. It's just beautiful. For somebody who's a bit of a stickler, I guess we've been playing this game for so long, about positioning, just gives you a ton of tools just for straight positioning, right? You can be exploiting the range to full on. So that's the main thing, basically. Looks of the warband and range. It's just a very characteristic thing. I don't think there's another warband with so much range too. I think it's
three for two,
fighters.
yeah. I don't
And
think
then,
so.
of course, there's this. The other ridiculous thing is just the absolutely, frankly, broken accuracy that the Viceroy himself, Drepur, gets once inspired. It's just 3 hammers with a reroll is just total. It's completely ludicrous, basically. So that also helps to make you laugh over about.
I mean, he has to be inspired, right? So
He has to inspire, but I don't think anybody else gets anywhere close to that. Yeah.
No, yeah, and it's and he's not too difficult to inspire either.
Exactly. So I mean, you just need to play a bit with risk, but it's.
Did you find that the errata change to the Death Pete reaction was it still extremely effective, or did you find it putting you out of position sometimes?
Well, so the errata is effective in the sense that so they were totally broken basically without the errata, because it was in the old world pre-errata. It was extremely easy to get a phase which is basically 4 attacks by Drepur, right? Because you would stab somebody, push, stab somebody else, push. It was just totally ludicrous, to be honest.
Yeah.
In the new world, basically this means that in most of my games, this push ability by the patrician, you only use it in the first phase. That's basically what it means. And after that, it's dead, because you're at the other side of you're basically in enemy territory, or everything is mixed up and you don't use it anymore. It's fine, basically. I think that now with the errata, they are perfectly. Actually, 2 things happen in the process from release, right? The errata, and then the change, if you remember, on the ordering of inspirations, which basically means that now you need to make normal attacks every now and then. You need to start the game with your 2 hammer attacks, which, instead of starting with a ridiculous profile that Drepur begins. Both things, frankly, very fair. Absolutely fair. I mean, this was broken from the gate. That's back when it was released. Yeah.
Was there anything that you were worried about seeing at Nova, like any particular warband?
Oh, big time. So I was worried about. So with this warband, I guess this goes a bit. You have to be very worried about warbands that start with 3 damage, because the big problem with this warband is that the 2 mooks, Hackfell and whatever is the name of the other one, they start at 3 wounds and 1 dodge, so they are very killable. And if you lose both of them, one of them you can lose. If you lose both of them quickly, typically, then basically you only have Drepur to do war, because the patrician doesn't really do much. And then it's bad. And frankly, before they inspire, they are very killable. It's 3 wounds in a 1 dodge defense. So, for example, Gnarl Spirit Pack, you would basically, of course, knowing that, then you deploy differently, right? In Gnarl Spirit Pack, you put the 2 mooks in the back to avoid them getting bombed by Goral, first activation or something like that, right? And a parallel to that is basically, I was expecting a meta with a lot of pings.
Yeah.
And that's a second version of that, right? You can get hit for 2, ping, the guy's gone, right? So that was my these were the main fears.
The fears.
I mean, anyway.
So you mentioned deployment. What did you find yourself taking more throughout the tournament? Did you put down the board, or did you pick select engagement where you're placing your board second and aligning the boards?
Oh, if I won the dice roll, I most of the time, even though I ended up playing against a lot more hold objective than I expected, if I won the dice roll, I wanted boards.
You wanted to place orientation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And did you take it? Were you aggressive with that? Like, kind of put them on the line or play the midfield? What was your strategy there?
Well, but these were kind of, this warband is, and especially the deck that I brought, is actually very flexible. So it really would depend on what you're playing. I ended up playing a lot of hordes, actually, funny enough, which is not what I expected at all, in terms of, Basically, I played one Exile Dead and two Skeletons, which is, in 5 matches, absolutely not what I expected. And in that matchup, it was good to be able to place boards because you are going to fill up their entire board. Yeah. So then for a fact that you can inspire immediately depending on how you deploy, right? You can basically force one of your spawning hexes to be basically within 2 of one of their spawning hexes. So then you're going to start the game.
Yeah.
With a guy inspired. So that's a good one. But generally, against things that you think, do you expect them to be more aggro, you can deploy further back, and even use a little bit of the offset. So awesome. In general, it works. Exactly. It's actually, I don't know that I've played any warband yet that I would prefer to place objectives. Partly because with all the limitations that we have now in placing objectives, which are also fair, many times, even if you only place 2, you can still, mess around quite a bit with the overall objective set.
Yeah.
If that concerns you. So I still consider it a win to win the dice roll and be able to mess around with boards. I think most gamers would agree with that. No, don't you guys agree that in most games you'd rather place boards than
Yeah, there are very few cases where I want to take tokens and manipulate that because, like you said, the person that's placing that second token probably can disrupt your plan most of the time.
Exactly.
So
I mean, there's some exception, because sometimes people really want or need for their battle plan to have this one objective in no man's territory.
Yes.
Right.
Or this one objective within in your territory, but very close to them. And sometimes if you place first, you can at least complicate their lives a bit.
Yeah. But I did have one game where an objective had to go on an edge hex, which was interesting. That does not happen very often. So,
oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, it actually happens more often lately, I found, because again in these games that I played the last month, the boards in this last box are full of hazard hexes.
That's true.
And then there's a lot more, blockage in the deployment of feature tokens. So actually,
So I think one of the hot topics for Nova was round times. And I know that you got through most of your games. From my recollection, you did end one round with a tie. But how did you, knowing that 90 minutes was going to be a real presser to get games finished, like what was your approach there to making sure you got everything in?
Frankly, I didn't have that. There's kind of no approach. Actually, if you check how I did throughout the tournament, it was 4 rounds of 2 games, and I only played 3 rounds in the final with Mark, and they gave us the time to actually play the 3 rounds. You remember, right? I mean, I personally, frankly, absolutely hate having to rush the 3rd game. That's it's a pet peeve that I have, because you get to you play, even if you played quickly, you maybe end up with 10 minutes for the last game, right? Mm-hmm. What are you supposed to do? Just play the first phase, and then, which is basically a gamble about who got the fastest surges. So actually, that's what we did with Brady. So the tie in my second round is 1 game each, and there was again maybe 10 minutes left, and we both said, do you want to play the 3rd? And we would say, what, let's take the tie. I mean, I think in matches like this, a tie is a much better reflection of what has happened.
Yes.
And the randomness of what would happen in the last game. And I think it's fine, actually, considering, and I think you guys basically went through ties all day. And it's fine, we played 1 each, and there's no time for a 3rd, okay, let's take a tie. BCP these days can deal with it, more or less. So why not? It's just the thing that happens,
it's very different for a war game or Underworlds to be, best of 2. But in the other game I play, Loricana, that's what the major tournaments, the Swiss is best of 2. Granted, the tiebreakers and the way that points are awarded are a little bit different. You split, and whoever wins the second game gets the tiebreaker. But it would be something to consider for the Underworlds community, because in the end of the day of this event, there was an undefeated and there was a person that went, 4-0-1, right? Like it was
Yeah.
like the championship between you and Mark, like you two had earned your place there. I don't think anyone would have been like, oh, like someone had all these ties. No, the people with all the ties were in the middle. So
I mean, in a way, the pointage system already punishes the ties because it's 1 point instead of 3.
yeah,
In the sense that you'd rather actually win one and lose one rather than tie 2.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So in a way, I think it's still fine. Somebody basically somebody who plays to tie is not gonna get in the top table.
yeah.
So therefore, I frankly have no issue with this. You still need to play to win. It's just that sometimes I win one, you win one. What are we supposed to do here? That's a tie.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think if in this spirit, then I have no problem. If this was the expectation, I actually have no problem with an hour and a half rounds.
If it was best of 2.
Best of 2.
Two
Yeah.
games in an hour and a half, that's actually perfectly doable without having to run like crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I mean, so they did that. That was at where was that tournament? In Europe that Honest won. His username in Discord is spelled Anders, but
Anders. Oh, the Nordic thing? They did this?
yeah, it was the Nordics. Was best of 2. As advertised, I think, with 90-minute rounds. And so I think that's a good idea is, I mean, maybe not to move to that, but to present that like as a community as a viable option for running a tournament.
Yeah, if this allows you, I mean, the truth is with this hour and a half, I mean, it was a tiring day.
Yes.
But if you know that you're going to play basically most of the time 2 games per round, it's not as bad. Right?
Yeah.
5 rounds is tiring, but it's not insane.
You have to have 5 rounds and you have to have the right number of players. I think if a tournament only had 12 or 15 players, the ties could get pretty messy. But the larger tournaments, I think the best of 2 for at least for Swiss would be fine. That final round needs to be best of 3. You need to come to a real conclusion like we did here. So
exactly. So I think that the TO here, I think, handled it very well. Frankly, exposed. Yeah,
he did. I agree. So before we get into the deck, favorite moment of the entire tournament, whether it was a dice roll, whether it was an opponent, what's your one favorite moment?
So my opponents, frankly, I mean, just huge shout out to everybody I played against. This actually, let me remark on this. It was an extremely pleasant day in many dimensions. So I never had an issue in the 5 games of lack of courtesy, lack of communication. Everybody's very open. And frankly, even giving and taking soft takebacks, which I think it's, what allows you to play in a relaxed way. That, the typical example, we're in the power step. And we play card, I play card, you say pass, I say pass. But they say, oh, actually, wait a second. Can I play this? In principle, if you were playing with a stickler, could say, well, you already said pass.
Yeah.
Right? And I know in other games, it's easy to find characters that would tell you, oh, that's too bad, you already said pass, right? Not a single example of this in all my games here. 5 different people playing, back and forth. Describing cards with what they do, because many people, So it was actually fun. That actually, frankly, this is what gives me in this game, is that I think that the community is just fantastic.
That's awesome.
That's great.
I don't know. I mean, I hope this was your experience as well.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into mine and Jason's experiences on another episode, but I can 100% echo that. Like, I had a great 5 rounds against 5 great opponents. Super courteous, pleasurable experience.
Great camaraderie. I think we kind of feel that we all love this game, and maybe this game is less loved than it should be loved.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are kind of all in best behavior, let's have an awesome time here that we're all together. I don't know. Maybe it's that. In other games, when you have 300 people playing, maybe you say, well, screw it. I'm here to win, no matter what. But in any case, I think it's remarkable. And yet another year, I come here, it's remarkable. The same thing. The community is just fantastic.
Yeah, that was, I'm sure I'll say it on our next episode, but the highlight was round 1 looking down all those tables and seeing 32 players of Underworlds play the game was awesome. It was such a great community, to the point, like, even after lunch, like, we only had 2 drops the entire day. Like,
Yeah.
People stayed, because they were having fun. Oh, another thing, by the way, because the people shouldn't confuse that this was people were there to win. Huh? Like there was,
Yes. Yes.
there were a whole bunch of Willy Wonka ticket holders. There were a whole bunch of other people that were definitely there to get the ticket. So this is not, but this is a good example that you can be there to compete and to try to win and actually not be an asshole. I mean,
that is right.
And just be nice and have a great time. I mean, so yeah. So that's, to me, that's the highlight. The highlight is the entire day of courteous people. The other highlight is seeing Calkins Jr.
Emmett, yeah.
The tables.
Yes.
That was absolutely fantastic. Like the young ones are coming up. So
they are. It is great to see the next generation playing games. So that was a great thing to see. So, well, awesome. That covers the event a little bit. That's the Warband pick. We alluded to the pick of the Toxic Terrors as the pairing deck. With that, we'll take a slight break and we'll come back and break down the deck in more depth.
And we're back. And we are here to break down Gerard's Toxic Drepur deck. For anybody that hasn't heard us do this before, we're going to ask Gerard kind of to guide us through this deck. If you were a player that has never played this pairing before, you downloaded the deck off of the library, and you want to know how to be most effective with it. So we'll run through it. We're going to ask Gerard, we'll ask you, what are the 3 objectives that you hope to see early? Like, what is like the ideal round 1 objective hand? What are the ideal round 1 gambits, and what are the ideal round 1 upgrades, and kind of why? And then, if there's a favorite in there somewhere that doesn't fit into those categories, you can call that out and tell us why. But the idea is to help a new player or a player that's never played this pairing before be able to play this deck effectively, from the get-go. So we'll start at the beginning, and you kind of alluded to this earlier in the earlier segment, but really, like, why Toxic Terrors? What was it about Toxic Terrors that grabbed you, as opposed to what you were able to do with maybe Fearsome Fortress or Breakneck Slaughter or something else?
So once you've resigned to the idea that you're not going to be playing defensive Drepur, meaning actually waiting for the other people to come to you and stabby them, then I think that actually this deck complements Drepur's the best. There's some arguments for Breakneck Slaughter. Actually, I think Eugene brought that, and that's also very defensible. If you want to go aggro, I mean. But Toxic Terrors has 2 things going for it. The first one, there's 3 or 4 gambits in that deck that are brutal. Sure. You can squeeze them. So some of these potions are just total trolling of the opposition. We can go through them when we discuss the gambits.
Yeah.
And basically, anything you play, if you could squeeze those gambits in, you would take them, right?
Sure.
So that's one. The other one is it has a couple of leader-centered objectives.
Okay.
Which are actually easy to do with Drepur. And the highlight here is Carve a Path.
Okay.
So Carve a Path is make 2 attacks with your leader. And if one of them is successful and made in enemy territory, you score it for 2 glory.
Oh. Yeah, that's
so
really good.
Basically, as we discussed before, Drepur has this absolutely insane over-the-top accuracy and range 2.
Yep.
So it's basically you're going to score this. Unless, if Drepur is alive, you're scoring this, right?
Sure.
And more often than not, you're scoring it for 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So
that alone
kind of rolls us in, right?
Yeah.
That's the first one, right? Do you want Carve a Path? Do you want Carve a Path round 1 though?
So the funny thing with the deck, the way that's not how I started, but the way I ended up, if you look at my deck, it's actually extremely flex in the sense that almost everything is scoreable in the first phase.
Okay.
So this is not a deck in which there's like 2 or 3 objectives that you really hope are not there. In an ideal world, actually, you'd rather delay Dread Harvest, which is this miserable 1 glory for 2 people being dead. This may not happen in the first phase, right? And you may want to delay mass poisoning if you can, because it's for 2 glory, but you need a poison upgrade already down to score that, and maybe it's not there in the first phase. Frankly, anything else, if you have any combination of 2 surges and 1 end phase of everything else, you are good to go. I wouldn't there are better combinations than others, but you need to go with that because, chances are is that you reshuffle that, you get mice poisoning in the next. You see what I mean? So if you don't have mice poisoning in your hand and you have 2 surges, you stop questioning yourself, you keep that hand.
Okay.
Yeah,
now, ideal. I mean, Ethereal Hunters is basically money in the bank.
Yes. Yeah.
Make a charge through somebody else or through a block hex. That just, this is going to happen.
You're going to charge through yourself.
Taking advantage is a good example of what happens when you expect one kind of meta and you find the opposite. Taking advantage, I thought I would be every game extremely happy to have in my first hand, because it gives you 2 glory if you score it in the first phase.
Okay.
It just has a problem that it requires you to have equal or more fighters in the opponent's territory as the opponent, which is not going to happen when you play skeletons twice on zombies once, right? Yeah. So this card that in the abstract I would have told you I always want this card in my first hand, it turns out that on Sunday it was actually not a great card to have in your first hand. It was actually pretty terrible. In fact, I think in these matchups I only scored them very late in the game. When I got killed a ton of stuff and then for 1 miserable glory. So that's but otherwise, again, kill something with a charge. That's unstoppable death. I'm fine with it, Masked Blades. Actually, you'd rather have it early than late because the more people you have, the easier it is to engineer attacks with support.
Sure.
So basically, you go down these Deathly Blooms. It's also very good in the first phase. Yes, somebody sitting in an objective and enemy territory. I mean, the whole deck basically wants to eventually walk into the other guy's land. So basically, everything else is scoreable. You can just go down to it. Is scoreable. Even taking advantage, frankly, is you want people dead for 4 wounds, and your leader in enemy territory.
Yeah,
but even in the first phase, you're typically going to be able to make 4 attacks on 2 hammers each and for 2 damage each. If you focus, it's actually the chances are that you can kill a 4-wound fighter.
Sure.
And then just making sure that Drepur is on the other side of the board. So that's how I ended up with this deck. Is that the truth is the objective deck, if you go down to it, is very hard to break. It's a very reliable in this sense. It's not very high glory, 15, although it's kind of stealth 17, right? Because of those 2 objectives that can be scored for 2.
For more.
2.
The more important part is this thing about not breaking. It's a deck that doesn't break.
Yeah, that's really good advice too for a player that may be trying it out after it's up on the library. Like if you get Dread Harvest and if you get Mass Poisoning, you want to mulligan those, right, and get something else because everything else you can kind of work.
Everything else you're going to be fine
with. Yeah. And maybe taking advantage if you're playing a horde. So that might be the easiest advice we've ever given. Like these are the 3 you're not looking for. Mulligan out of them.
I like that.
The rest you just go. I mean, there's this thing that if you look at Venom Gorged, so there's 2 objectives here that need a poison upgrade down, and that's Mass Poisoning and Venom Gorged. Venom Gorge I scored in the first phase sometimes because if you have this upgrade here, you only need 1 seed glory to be able to put it down on whoever is in an objective and you score it, right? But sometimes the worst case scenario is you have Venom Gorge in one hand and no poison upgrades in the other. And that's that's basically that's the highest thing closer to a brick, frankly, that you can get in this deck.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it. All right, gambits. You alluded. What are the?
Oh,
How
so
are you
one,
going
so
to
of
mess
course,
your opponent up?
yeah, so you can look at the four cards that are here that are from the Toxic Terrors deck. Actually, three of them: Choking Venom, whatever. But Freezing Venom is horrible, right?
Yep.
You can just drop it down. By the way, no stipulation. You can just drop it. Choose one enemy fighter. Boom. And now this guy cannot make super actions, and is ensnared basically.
Yeah.
And this is just so disruptive to people's plans, right? And you see somebody firing up somebody's charge, sometimes even after playing the typical, play a gambit, this guy gets +1 dice in the next phase, and you say, well, sorry, this guy is not charging in the next
Yeah.
phase. It's a horrible card, to be honest.
It's so rude.
And to be honest, a couple of times I also played it simply for the ensnare.
Okay.
So when some guy that I really need killed and it's on dodges, maybe 2 dodges, I have just wasted the cards just for the ensnare.
Okay.
So it's the other one that it's great in the first round, because then for sure you can play it, is ill prepared.
Yes.
In the first round, typically people are in starting hexes. I mean, that's what the game requires you to do. And then same thing, right? Somebody's souping up a charge. You say, sorry, that's not going to happen. This guy gets a move token. It's just nasty. It's ugly.
Yeah.
It's extremely, extremely disruptive.
Yeah.
And
those two cards are toxic.
They are toxic. I mean, that's the thing is, Toxic Terrors is not such great a deck for most warbands, to be honest, but it has like 2 or 3 of the nastiest gambits in the game, and I think these are basically it. And actually, no safe ground is great. It's basically distraction. Is distraction plus stagger. Is distraction plus stagger with no limits on range, except this thing about being within 1 of a feature token hazard hex. And guess what? In this world of ping worms and stuff, there's plenty of hazard hex around. So that's just a great card. The Choking Venom has this particularity. I took it because I thought, well, sometimes you need more damage. So this basically gives you Gribus.
Yeah.
So there's 2 great things about Choking Venom. First, you just drop it on a fighter, no stipulations. Great. Second, it gives you Gribus, which is not so great, but fine. Third, it actually lasts. It lasts until you make a successful attack. So it's not like next activation. You could drop it and then still. What's the problem with this? It doesn't say that it lasts until the next successful attack in which you got a crit.
Yeah.
So then what happened all Sunday long? The best accuracy upgrade in the game.
Of course, yeah.
You drop this down, you're going to hit the next attack for sure, and it's not going to be a crit.
Yep.
That's exactly what's going to happen, and that's what happened all Sunday long. If somebody correct me, some of my personal, I don't think I got Gribus out of this card in the entire game, but all of them hit immediately. So I guess you get something. Yep. Now, of course, there's the cards, you get methodical attacks. That's kind of best card in the game. You missed an attack, do it again. Fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Let me just talk about Deathly Vengeance. So this is my preferred card, right? So I'm a spiteful person by nature. So you come and attack me, I can stab you back with my rusty poking stick. I like it, right? I was playing my games with Martin, and he was saying, this doesn't come up so often. I kept my faith, right? In the embryo deck that George sent me, this card is not there. And I tell him, I love this card. He says, no, it never works out, whatever, right? But in my mind, I said, well, imagine. But here is an example that is not so crazy where this could work. You have a poison upgrade down on one of your fighters. Yep. This fighter has made the first attack. Now they come and they kill you. Well, there goes your scoring of mass poisoning.
Sure.
Because you need 2 attacks. But Deadly Vengeance, and before I die, I score a 2 glory thing because I poke you with nasty revenge. Yep. So that's all in my mind. It works awesomely in my mind. I go on Sunday. I don't think I hit any of these Deadly Vengeance attacks. I tried game after game. I actually think I missed all of them miserably. So there you go. The audience can take this for whatever it's worth. I still think that it has a place in the deck. It's just that, you got to trust it.
It's the most accurate warband until you need them to be accurate.
Exactly. Until yeah. And then upgrades. So what about upgrades? So here is the secret. The upgrades in Toxic Terrors are awful. They are bad. They are terrible. One after the other, most mediocre upgrades in the history of humanity. That's actually the real tax. To be honest, the real tax of playing Toxic Terrors is the upgrade. The upgrade suit is absolutely awful. But you need to take a few, because a few objectives depend on that. Right? So then you do the best you can. So what's the best combination here? Calus doesn't do anything by itself, basically. But in combination with some other poison upgrade, then it's a +1 damage. So, there are worse things here.
Sure.
The Venom Bite Shank is a ludicrous attack of 4 hammers with Cliff, which sounds very sexy until you realize that it does 1 damage.
Sure.
Although I think I used it once.
I was going to say, it's 2 damage with Callus on it.
There you go, exactly. So that sometimes you live the dream. More often, you are just sorry that you have to put this on because you have to put this on fighters that are range 2 and do 2 damage. So basically, it's a worse attack in all dimensions, right? So anyway, what do you really want in your hand? I mean, Pall of Fear, that's basically been a classic card for these guys. Pall of Fear is a total dick move of a card. You put it down, and now attack. It's basically -1 dice for range 1 and range 2 attacks that target the fighter. That's just great. This goes straight on Drepur. If the guy looks healthy, it goes on Drepur. And then there's basically, how is it called? Bitter Strength or something, a +1 damage. Everybody knows that. And Deathly Vigor is very useful in this deck because it's a +1 wound that you put on 1, never on Drepur. Drepur is gonna, never on Drepur. You don't want to give the extra glory, but get one of the 2 books to 4 wounds. That's actually extremely useful.
Sure.
So these are like, all jokes aside, 3 best upgrades here: Pall of Fear, Deathly Vigor, Bitter Strength. Just they are classics, and like all the classics, they never fail to do their job, right?
Yeah.
So that's the deck in a way. As you can see, it's a very flex deck in this sense. It's typically not gonna brick on you, and you just try to move into enemy territory and kill stuff efficiently. That's if you have.
Cool.
I just realized what we should have called the episode.
What's that?
I drum the drum.
That's what I said. That's what I said all Sunday long. Now the patrician drums the drum, and this guy moves up. Yeah.
So anything like in the pre-show we talked a little bit about boards. Your favorite board to take? So
with this, I'm not going to surprise anybody. Glacial Tomb. If you lose the roll and you have to put a board first, Glacial Tomb is great. These guys move 3 uninspired, but remember you have the pushes. So there's basically no configuration of a Glacial Tomb that you cannot score with a good, distribution of pushes around, that you cannot score the hand pursues, which is basically everybody in enemy territory.
Yeah.
So that would be if I lose the dice roll, that typically this one goes down. And the other one for the same thing is Streak and Swamp, although that one I'm a bit more nervous about because it has some hazard hexes and this world of Pingworm, it can put you in bad places. But
just don't lose the roll off twice, right?
Exactly. That's the funny thing. Yeah, exactly. The second one can be painful. And then when you win the dice roll, then there's 2 modes in a way. When you think you're the beatdown and you really have to move into enemy territory, then there's a whole bunch of boards out there that give you 4 hexes very close to the midline. So like basically pick any of those,
Sure.
The reliquary, whatever, right? There's a bunch of Shattered Tower itself, yeah. And if you play against aggro, sometimes it's nice to there's all these other that you deploy kind of in the middle of your board, so that the other guys really have to charge in. The idea being, they charge in, maybe they bomb one of your guys, but if you've deployed well, you inspire the other two and start poking back. Basically, that's the against aggro. Basically, you should be ready to lose one of these books in the first charge, but always deploy in a way that they are basically clumped together. So when somebody comes and charges in, it's close enough to the rest that Drepur and the other move get inspired, and then you start stabbing back. That's the only thing that is a little bit, but that's, you get this, you play the deck, that sometimes if you play against people that invade you, it's true that there's a little bit of a contradiction between scoring your hand and killing stuff.
Sure. And
you need to kind of manage that. Sometimes you want to do one more than the other, depending on the surges not so much, because the surges tend to be about killing, but the end phases are about, for example, everybody moves. Typical situation, you have everybody moves in your hand, but you have a whole bunch of people in range of Drepur.
Yeah.
What do? Do you move everybody? Basically, do you charge, all the times that it needs to be charged to score that thing? Or you just stay where you are and start stabbing left and right with Drepur? So, these are like the in-game decisions that you need to make.
If you hit the attacks, you just stab them.
Right.
Exactly.
If you missed, you should have moved away.
Exactly. That's what I found myself ruining. Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
So, Jerod, any other questions? I think we covered most of it. You have anything else?
Yeah, I think so. So this is a piece that we cover every time we review a deck. If somebody sits down let's say you sit down across from somebody, that was a mouthful, playing your deck, what's your strategy? Like, how do you beat your own deck?
Like if I know it's my deck, because
or like your advice to somebody else that might come across this deck. So now that you've already won your tournament,
the week exactly. I mean, the week. These guys are not, super people. So these again, you have to remember this is a warband that starts with two guys that are important on 3 wounds and 1 dodge.
Sure.
If you can engineer some way of killing these guys before they inspire, you are playing in the sprinkler, because typically Drepur is very powerful, but now that he doesn't get that many pushes and stuff, it's like one threat, because frankly the patrician almost never does anything.
Sure.
Right? So first thing, if you have some big hitter, it might be worth to set up in a way that you can try to bomb either Hackfell or whoever the other guy's name is, right? Godric, exactly. That would help you. If you cannot, then, and your deck allows you, that's, I don't know what I'm playing in this scenario, right?
Sure.
Then force him to come to you.
Right.
Don't go to him, because if you go to him, you inspire him, right? But if they actually have to advance on this pathetic and inspired profile, then you can countercharge the mooks. Right?
Yeah.
So that's it's still whatever. Dice need to work, and your hand, again, I don't really know what you're playing, right? But this is certainly not invincible. In fact, I don't think, to be honest, I still like the best pairing with Toxic Terrors is not this. I mean, it continues to be in my mind Elethane. It's the best pairing. It's the best pairing with Toxic Terrors by a long shot.
And you've faced that, right?
I faced that, yeah, and I can also exactly. And you can see, oh man, this guy is actually getting use of these freaking upgrades that in my deck are just stealing, plus the combination. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other surges in the deck that you cannot take when you only take 2 or 3 poisons. But once you add the Spine Fin poison, once you are playing with 4 or 5 poisons, now there's a whole bunch of other awesome surges that come to play.
Okay.
And people forget that, but Elethane has a range 3 attack, which means that getting 2 attacks out of him. The first, the range 3 attack is not very accurate, but Carve a Path doesn't require both attacks to hit.
Sure.
So you can make the first one, which is a throwaway of the thing. And by the way, we all know that when you make a throwaway 2-sword attack, it's a crit every time.
Absolutely.
And then so you do this first, and then you charge, and the charge attack is super accurate, and then you see what I mean. So it's yeah. So that's why I think it's the best pair. But actually, I mean, as to my surprise, you know, this is actually it worked. It worked. But you see, I'm using what, like 4 up? Well, I guess no. I'm using half
You
of
have
the
4 poison upgrades.
4
It's,
games.
well, you'll prepare. Sorry, no safe ground is not a poison. That's part. I mean, I would love it if it was a poison, actually. So that's part of the issue. But well, I guess there's five objectives out of 12, 4 gambits and 4 upgrades. So
Yeah.
actually, it would be like 40% of the deck
Yeah.
is toxic. So it's good.
No,
Not too bad.
that's nice.
So,
All right. One last question, and then you can drop your bomb, Jason. And I think we know the answer to this. How would you rate this for a new player? New player, they come to the library, they download the deck. How easy of a time are they going to have playing this deck?
If they have, so they might trip over themselves for the first couple of games, not after that. So if they play like 4 or 5 times, then I don't think this is not a super brainy deck. I don't think. I mean, positioning. I mean, you can always play better or worse, right? I mean, the good thing.
Sure.
No, I mean, as we discussed before, Drepur is even more than other. If you position well, you take. You really want to take full advantage of that range too, right? And that's what, charge to the right spot, so you have 2 guys in range. So if you poke one and then you are charged down, you can poke the other. These kind of things, But I don't think that the toxic terrors in particular is not more difficult to play than another variety of Drepur. Let me put it like this.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So like the deck doesn't play itself per se, but it's close.
But exactly, it shouldn't, especially because once I converge to this, that it's very hard for it to break.
Yeah.
It's
That's
one
a
of
big
these
deal.
things, you draw your cards and you play what your cards tell you to play in a way. You try to do what your cards tell you to do. And again, the only choice is that thing about, am I really going to follow the cards? Or sometimes I should just be stabbing left and right.
Yeah.
And try to rack up glory just the other way. Just by kills.
Cool. Sounds like a Jason Silver Plus.
Yeah, I think it's Silver Plus.
Nice.
Almost gold.
Almost.
So in closing, let's say that Nova happened again tomorrow, but they made a ruling that you were not allowed to take this warband in this deck. What would you most look forward to playing if Nova happened again?
Actually, this is going to sound funny, but all these games that I played against Martin and his different varieties of Moloch he was trying to put together have convinced me this reskin version of Moloch is an enormous amount of fun.
Yes.
Right? I hadn't played it, and I hadn't played against it. But over the last month, I played more games probably than I wanted to. Like, at least, I don't know, half a dozen. No, it must be a dozen. And, I think he played with Void Curse Trolls. He played with Pingworm. He played, there's a third one, I don't remember now. And all of them is super cool. Like, I didn't know that. Now the minions come back. You can actually resuscitate. You can resuscitate the Spite Shroom and stuff. It's hilarious. It's actually, so I think I would actually try to put together one of these combinations just for the hell of it. I mean, I think it's like a huge amount of fun.
This coming from the man that won 2022 with Moloch. That's not a surprise.
Yeah. That's right.
That was old Moloch, but this is way funny. I mean, that old Moloch, frankly, I would deploy the 3 mooks in the back to avoid them. They wouldn't do anything. It's just their whole purpose was to avoid dying, right? Yeah. I think there was a couple of sources that they could actually do something about, and it was all. I mean, if you remember, I think I played Gerard, right? That
it was primacy.
Exactly, that was like the last gasp of primacy.
Yeah,
and I just made the primacy deck basically.
Well, that's awesome that the new Moloch is fun to play against and fun to play. So,
have you played it?
I have not. One of the only warbands that has never been on the table for me ever, even in testing, like with Gerard, like for events and stuff. I've never put my physical Moloch onto the table.
I just think it's this new version. By the way, the new version of what's his called, the Rats. Also looks like a lot of fun, actually. But this one I haven't played with or against. I was just, spending time in Underworlds DB.
Yeah.
And it just was cool. So anyway, this reskin box seems actually looks good. I don't know. Yeah, I hadn't played much, and now that I've seen it, at least the Moloch thing, I mean, seems like a lot of fun.
Well, cool. Well, that'll wrap up our audio deck guide here. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, we will close out the show. And we're back, and that will wrap up the 69th episode of the Battle Mallet podcast. As always, we appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you have not followed us in your favorite podcasting listening app, we'd appreciate it if you did that. If you want to follow us on the socials, we are Battle Mallet 1 on Twitter, Battle Mallet PCast on Instagram. We're Battle Mallet Podcast on Facebook. We posted a bunch of pictures from the Nova Open Convention, both on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram. So that's 3 things, not 2. So both was the wrong word there. That's okay. We're professionals. So just, you can take a look at what we're in there. We have a Discord for our gaming community. It's mostly for locals, but we chat with people that are abroad. So if you want to chat with us, you can find us there. Gerard is there in that server, so if you want to find him there. The links to all of these things are also going to be in the show notes. If you want to take a look at Gerard's library, it is in the Battle Mallet library, and I'm pretty sure at this point, if you search Nemesis decks on Google, we are the #1 result for that, which is great. And the more people visit it, the more likely that is to happen, which just helps people get into the game. I think that's it. I do want to do one community shout out. If you have not listened to What the Hex, his episode, Davey hosted his son Emmett talking about their preparation for Nova. It's a great listen. It's really cool to hear the next generation, kind of what they're thinking. Gives me hope maybe that my own kids will be able to play one day. Jason, any other shout outs?
So as this will be the first episode post Nova, just a shout out to all the people that we met at Nova. Thanks for coming up and saying hello. Thank you to What the Hex crew for coming out in force. It was a pleasure to meet all of you and see Skylar again. The Madison crew that came with them was a pleasure. Thanks to Path to Glory. Thanks for all the locals that play in and at Nova. And again, thank you to the Nova staff and volunteers. It was another great event. Left re-energized for gaming. So thank you all for what you do.
Awesome. Well, for the Battle Mallet podcast, I am a ghost who wishes he had a horse skull for a face. This is Jerod signing out.
So this lecture is over and the professor's out.
Class dismissed. And I'm Jason Table Newmary. Get the hell out of here.
Peace.
Go Bills.
Nice.
The Battle Mallet podcast is protected under the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find more information via links on podcast.battle-mallet.com. Music by Anno Domini Beats. Cool. And you also get the pleasure of being on episode 69, Gerard.
Whoa!
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.